If you have a public comment form to submit, please get it in right now. It's 5 p.m. If you have a public comment form to submit, get it into Holly, please. Hello, it is 5 p.m. on Monday, October 23rd, 2023. We're good to go, Jesse? Thank you. This is a regular board meeting for the Monroe School District. Present are myself, President Bumpus, Director Barnes, Director Whitfield. We're waiting on Director Etzkorn. We have student representatives Laura Wittenberg, Sophia Willett, and Superintendent Sean Woodward, as well as district leadership team and school district staff, as well as members of the community. Director Campbell will not be in attendance this evening. Members of the public can log into the regular board meeting using the Zoom link attached to tonight's agenda that is found on the board docs website. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to tonight's meeting. We are so happy to have you join us. All comments during tonight's meeting are audio recorded and will be available online on our website. This is in addition to the written minutes. Please understand that while it may appear the board is moving quickly on important matters, there have been previous discussions on these issues either in earlier meetings or in board workshops, which are also open public meetings. Each director has had ample time to study the issues, ask appropriate questions, and obtain satisfactory answers from the superintendent, his staff, or through outside research. Those wishing to address the board during public comments must turn in a public comment form prior to the start of the meeting at 5. Any form submitted after the meeting has started will be held for the next meeting to address the board at that time. We have one late item added to the agenda. Item 5.01, Public School Employees Collective Bargaining Agreement has been attached to tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that the Monroe School District Board of Directors approve the agenda as amended today, October 23rd, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second that the Monroe School District Board of Directors approves the agenda as modified dated October 23rd, 2023. All in favor, raise your hand. The agenda item has passed 4-0. Moving on to agenda item 2.01, belonging and attendance goals presentation. I would like to welcome Chief Academic Officer Kim Whitworth, Director of Curriculum and Assessment Jennifer Murphy, and Director of Prevention Services Joe Nigel, who will join us this evening on Zoom.
All right. Sure.
The survey platform, and we do surveys in fall and spring. In the fall, we just do students only, kind of getting a baseline for where we are in the year. And then in the spring this year, for the first time, we were able to survey our staff and also our families. And we have a lot of buckets right now. As we hone in on our strategic plan, we will hone in on reducing probably what we're looking at. But the information that we've collected so far has really helped to establish a baseline of where we are so that we can think about what is it that we need to focus on. So in the results of our last year surveys, one of the things that we identified as an area for growth is sense of belonging. So sense of belonging is the extent to which students feel they are valued members of their school's community. And belonging can include feelings related to understanding, respect, membership, connectedness, and mattering. There is a research article from Panorama embedded in the slideshow. And we're going to talk about how kind of belonging can positively impact academic outcomes today. So we're specifically going to look at student data. So when we survey students, we kind of survey them in buckets. So grades 3 through 5 does one bucket of surveys, and then grades 6 through 12 does a different bucket. So these are kind of the questions that are asked in terms of student belonging. So the first question is, how well do people at your school understand you as a person? 66% of our 3rd through 5th graders responded favorably. It says, how much support do adults at your school give you? And 75% of students responded favorably. So they probably said a lot of support, or as compared to unfavorable answer would be no support. How much respect do students at your school show you? You can see that 50% responded favorably here. So we can identify that as maybe an area for growth. And then overall, how much do you feel like you belong at your school? And 69% of our elementary students said that they feel like they belong. In the right-hand column, you'll see that there's numbers kind of pointing up or down. That's compared to the fall survey. So this is the spring survey that we're looking at. And compared to the fall survey, some of those responses have gone down. That's typical. Students and staff are really excited in the fall. Sometimes by spring, our feelings wane a little bit. So we look both at our growth over a year and then our growth between like dates and times. So fall to fall, spring to spring, and also fall to spring data. So this next slide kind of shows you how we compare to the nation. So if you looked at how is student belonging in grades 3 through 5 across the nation, we scored in the 65 percentile, or the 80th percentile, I'm sorry, at 65%, and we actually exceeded the nation's average in belonging at elementary. So you can see there's a couple more questions here for grades 6 through 12. And the questions are, how well do people at your school understand you as a person? And we're at 38%. How connected do you feel to the adults at your school? 29% responded favorably. How much respect do students in your schools show you? That number had only 37% favorable responses. How much do you matter to others at the school? Only 34% favorable. And then overall, how much do you feel like you belong at your school? Only 43% of students responded favorably, and all of those dropped through the course of the year. So if you go to the next slide, when you look at our secondary results compared to the national average, we're only in the 10th percentile. So it does go to show that we have a lot of work to do in this area. And if you remember from last year, when our schools kind of set their school improvement plan goals, many of them had already identified that this was an area for growth. And so we're just building on that for this year's goals. So Joe is at a conference, and so we're going to jump in and share with you some data that he also pulled. So how we often get asked in learning and teaching, how does belonging impact school engagement? And so this graph is kind of showing you that there's a connection with how students feel about their school and their teachers, and that when students feel connected, they're more likely to adopt their school's values and their school's priorities as their own. And that directly applies to learning. So if a teacher says, hey, it's really important that you learn this, if a student feels connected to that teacher, they're going to try harder to learn the material. They're going to focus more. So in the 90s, the University of Washington linked connection to bonding in a really famous study called the Seattle Social Development Strategy. As a result of that early work, we know the formula for bonding connection. Young people need an opportunity to meaningfully contribute to their classmates, their classroom, and their campus. They need to be taught the skills to successfully contribute, and they must be recognized for their effort along the way, not just their accomplishments. And in the graph, you'll see that kind of like it goes down over time, and that's pretty typical. We see that across the nation, that, you know, students' feelings of belonging diminish over time. Most 95 or something percent of kindergartners are like, yeah, I love school. And by 12th grade, we don't see that excitement as much anymore. So as adults, it's hard to give your best every day when you don't feel like you belong. And I think it's the same for our students, right? I know when you feel like you're making a difference at work, you work harder. When you feel like you're connected to your coworkers, you look forward to going to work. It's the same for our students. So Joe was asking the question, when was the last time I volunteered or donated to an organization that I felt indifferent about? So, you know, when we're connected, we put in more. Giving time and effort is our treasure. It's precious. Until students feel like they belong, it's difficult to expect them to put forward their best effort. And this is not a Monroe issue. It's an educational system issue. The next slide just really talks about, this is the number, 142% is the increased likelihood that our students will skip 4 or more days of school if they don't feel engaged. So we're going to talk a little bit about attendance and chronic absenteeism in a minute. So, thinking about, we want our kids to attend, right? So if they don't feel engaged, they're more likely to skip.
So research shows that missing 10% of the school, or about 18 days in most school districts, negatively impacts academic performance. And that's pretty self-explanatory. If you're not there, you're not learning. What happens in a classroom cannot be replicated by giving a student a packet or just saying, read this chapter, or even watch this webinar of what happened in the class. It's really important that they have the opportunity to be there, to engage with their peers and have conversations and learn from one another. So attendance is important. And we figured it's about 2 days a month, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it adds up after a while. So here is our district and state comparison. And as you can see, we track just pretty much with our state data. And this is showing over time. So our attendance has gone down. Some of that was the pandemic. Some of this is still students trying to figure out how they belong in a school and how they're engaging and how they're showing up.
This is just, we talk a lot about Panorama, and earlier we talked about the survey portion of Panorama, but Panorama also does a lot more for our schools and for our school leaders. And so this is an example of an attendance report that they get every day on their dashboard. So this is from a school. It shows day by day, week by week, month by month. This is a year to date. So you can see that the attendance, the average was 92.9% last year at this time. It's now 93.9% this year. We'll see over time how it goes. I know the high school is really using the attendance monitoring to really help them set their goals and monitor about whether or not they're making progress.
So in learning and teaching, as well as in the superintendent's office, we are looking at this data at least once a week to make sure that we're keeping on track with it, noticing anything that seems to be increasing attendance. We want to know what people are doing to increase attendance, as well as what's happening in schools when the attendance starts to decline.
This is just a little graphic that Joe wanted to put in so that it could help to kind of cement kind of the 3 prongs that we're talking about for student behavior. So we have sense of belonging, attendance, and school engagement, and all of those go into the academic outcomes for students.
So here's our sense of belonging goal. 40% of secondary students will report a positive sense of belonging as measured by the Panorama survey by the end of the 23-24 school year, up from 36% in the 22-23 school year. And then 68% of elementary students will report a positive sense of belonging as measured by the Panorama survey by the end of the 23-24 school year, up from 65% last year. Our theory of action is, if we increase student sense of belonging, they will be more likely to attend classes, which will increase academic achievement. Elementary and secondary goal sets come from where we were in the fall of 22-23. We're trying to set goals that are realistic. We know that we want, 95%. That's a huge leap. As we're looking at the strategies to encourage more students to attend on a regular basis, we want to set some realistic goals. And so that's where that data point came from. Our attendance goal right now is 75% of Monroe School students will be back on track for positive attendance by the end of the 23-24 school year, up from 67.3% in the 21-22 school year. Students identified in Panorama as on track for graduation have between a 90 and 95% attendance rate. The 75% came when you're looking at our Panorama data. Poor is fewer than 75%. So we want to have something better than poor attendance. And again, this is more of a realistic goal that we set as we're looking at strategies that will have the most impact on our students here in Monroe. And this would be the time for you to ask Jennifer and I any questions that you might have about this.
All right, thank you very much for this presentation. I think this is very useful data. But overall, I think it's very concerning. So my general question is, well, what are we going to do about it? It's great to set goals. How are we going to do this?
So in Panorama, there is a whole section for strategies. So there's strategies that are embedded in Panorama that you can click on for elementary or secondary. Each of our schools is setting an attendance goal and a sense of belonging goal. Sense of belonging are simple things like greeting students at the door by name, having agendas up so that students know what to be expecting for the day, helping them to become more confident, more relaxed about what's happening. They have a sense of what's going to be happening in the class. For attendance, I know that we have some schools that are making sure that they are calling home, doing home visits. We have laws in the state where we are required after a certain number of absences to make contact with families, and we're working through that process as well. So this is all about engaging with students to find out specifically for them and for groups what it is that is causing them to not want to be at school. What are some of the barriers for them? Also, family engagement is another piece to this. The more that we can work with families to help understand the root cause of why students may not be attending, the better we are to able to come up with some strategies that really are authentic to what our students and our families need.
So will there be a plan or something for us to see?
Yeah, so in November, at each of the board workshops before our meetings, each of our schools are going to go over their school improvement plans, and they'll outline attendance, sense of belonging, math, and ELA. And for each of them, and they'll have goals for their school for each of those areas and associated evidence-based strategies that they'll share with the board at that time.
Okay. So in this survey, we say, how much respect do students at your school show you? We score very low in the high school, and 50% in the elementary is concerning. Are there more questions in here to kind of peel that back
There
more?
are a lot more questions from all of the buckets. It can be a little bit overwhelming, but I'm happy to share them with you. I think one of the things that we did uncover is that students have a low sense of belief about their ability to be successful. And so I think that impacts not only the way that they feel about themselves, but also the way they interact with others. That's something that many of our school leaders are looking at with their buildings and thinking about and trying to address. I think in addition, I think one of the strategies that's currently happening at the high school, for example, is their work with Christian Page and in looking at student voice and getting students involved in the process of understanding the district and contributing to that. And that is helping with some of those pieces. We hope to see improvements in that data based on the efforts that we've put in. We believe that we're using strategies that are evidence-based, and so we should see improved outcomes. Each school context is a little bit different, so it's hard to say like we're doing this one lever because it's very individualized in the data about how each school is represented in that. So school leaders are working closely with us and with Sean to kind of identify the specific evidence-based strategies that are most effective for their school.
And I want to amplify again what Jennifer said about talking with students. And Jamie Johnson has done an amazing job with not just the ASB leadership, but having leadership from multiple groups at Monroe High School and talking with them about what's working for them and what's not, and building relationships. I also know that we have school leaders in other schools that are pulling together focus groups to talk with students about what's working well for them in their schools and what are some things that need to change maybe so that they can be their best selves and their best learning selves.
So we tried this last year though, right? Were these the same strategies as last year, or what's different this year?
Sometimes the strategies that we pick may not be implemented as well. So these are questions that we will be asking our school leaders. So this is the same strategy that you used last time. You had minimal, if very little improvement, which I think there has been some steady improvement, maybe not to the degree that we would like to see immediately. But sometimes it's not the strategy, it's the way it was implemented. So we need to make sure that we're really digging in to find out why is the data staying flat, decreasing, or not rising as much or as quickly as we would like for it to.
And one thing, if I may add, this is the first year that as a district that we've had a goal in this area. So I think this is the third year of the use of Panorama, or the second.
This, we've done one year. So
Yeah.
we got a baseline last year of the data. So this will be our first attempt to set a goal, have real action items related to that goal, and then measure that, the effectiveness of that.
So yeah, so this is year one of saying, hey, this is a focus area, because we think this area, improving in this area, will have a positive impact on both attendance and student learning. So we just setting this goal and establishing some district and building level strategies, we're going to see improvement. And I do want to think, one thing I want to point out is the fact that I think sometimes community members have said, hey, look, you're not sharing some of the challenges publicly. And I want to thank the team for sharing some not great data, and putting ourselves out there a little bit. We're acknowledging it, and we're taking it very seriously. So I just want to say that as well. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I don't mean to be negative or anything, but it's very alarming. So you say you look at the attendance data every month. How are we looking so far this year?
Yellow.
Yeah, we're yellow, which
So
is.
it's probably
it's-
similar,
it's
65%
fair.
range.
Yeah, we're about at the 63-65%. Some of our schools are improving, and some of our schools have kind of flatlined. And so in fact, I was just talking to a couple of the teachers at the high school who are heavily invested in the attendance there, and they're really kind of following it closely. They're trying to identify what are the best strategies. They were just at a conference for 2 days. One of those days was focused on some of this work. So I think we haven't found the magic answer. I think there's a lot of strategies that are being attempted right now. And the good thing about Panorama, like Kim said, is it has a playbook that gives really specific strategies based on what they're seeing on site. So it might be having student focus groups, it might be phone calls home, it might be conferences, it might be home visits, but they can give really specific actions based on what the school is seeing, which can be really helpful to help them figure out what to do next. So they're not just throwing things at the wall.
And that's district wide, right? So I
Mhm.
assume the elementary schools are higher, high schools lower.
Yeah, elementary has higher attendance in general. High school tends to
So
have
what are
lower.
we at the high school, like 50%, 55%?
No,
It's yellow across the.
it's
yellow all
yellow
the way
across
down.
the board, but
Okay.
I think the last
fair.
week or month was like in the 50s at the high school. Yeah, but they're working.
And I think I also just want to emphasize that this is a partnership. We are all responsible for this goal. I think this is where we're looking at staff members, we're looking at students, and we're looking at families. We're going to have to all work on this because there are multiple reasons why students might not be showing up. We've just identified sense of belonging as something that we can focus on to help with the attendance piece.
Okay, so just a follow-up question. When we're talking about strategies that we started implementing last year and maybe we didn't see the growth that we wanted to, and Kim, you talked about it was probably maybe the implementation of that particular strategy. What supports are we putting in place to help our staff improve or change the implementation of these strategic things that have been identified?
So I think we're working with staff on what does welcoming environment look like specifically in the classroom. I think our building leaders and counselors and people like Jamie Johnson are looking at the school as a whole, but teachers are also thinking really critically about what can I do in the classroom to make this a more welcoming environment. We also have some of Joe's staff who follow up with families and with students who are struggling with attendance. We have an amazing counseling staff in our district who are also able to use this data to pull together students who might be impacted by the welcoming environment, the sense of belonging piece, as well as the attendance piece. So this is definitely an all hands on deck initiative.
And are we providing just stuff for, I mean, office staff, janitorial staff? Because all it takes is one individual, right, to make a child feel like they belong. And that individual can be anybody. It doesn't always have to be the teacher. It can be a paraeducator. It can be anyone. So are we providing the same supports that we're providing to our teachers and our building leaders to the rest of the staff that are within those school buildings so that they have the opportunity to help make that change as well?
That is such an excellent point, because we know that bus drivers, when they're picking up kids, that's that first point of contact. And I know that Mike Birch has been amazing at making sure that his team gets the professional development that they need. Kelly Hazlip as well has, like when we did the Speak Out at Schools training, she brought all of our lunch staff in to go through that training together. So this will be another one of those opportunities where we can work with Mike and his team, work with Kelly and her team, work with office staff to provide them the strategies that we're using in the context in which they work with students.
The exciting thing is like the Panorama playbook is available to all of our staff. And so at the building level, our building leaders work with their SAC teams and with their guiding coalitions, and they kind of determine what the needs are on site. And should one of those things be identified for the particular team, they have a really nice playbook that they can go to. Mike has access to it for our bus drivers. Kelly Pitts for our security staff. So this is something that all of our directors have access to and have been exposed to. And we continue to onboard training. And we're working with Panorama right now to look at how we can roll out more specific training to our specific school sites based on their needs. And I'm just in the middle of getting that kind of planned out.
Okay, so last question. You said that this is going to be, Panorama survey is going to be retaken in the springtime. Are you going to represent us with, these are some of our results from the spring survey? This is sort of how these things have worked out, with the change in implementation and addressing these things, just so that we can kind of gauge and see.
Yeah,
where
we'll
we're
get a
at.
new baseline in fall for students only. Erin's working on that kind of communication. And then the spring survey will again do students, staff, and families.
And I think to align with what we've done in the past, and this is certainly up to the superintendent, but we've done like the goal setting, the school improvement plans in the fall with people. And then at the end of the year saying, okay, so remember these are our goals. This was our data. Here's what we did, and here's where we ended up. And here's what we've learned from that. And here's what we're going to do next. So we can still can continue to do that if that is something that the team wants to do.
I just have a couple of questions as well. So I think Molly touched on it a little bit about tools for educators. I was actually going over the Panorama data last night as well, and I was looking at the teachers' staff specific stats, and it was concerning to me just some of the belonging or well-being numbers. So I was wondering if there was if we're doing something to support teachers and staff, and what the plan is there as well, because I think you outlined it here too, where you said as adults, it's hard to give your best every day when you don't feel like you belong and that your work is irrelevant. So I'm curious what that looks like for staff and our leaders.
I think one of the things that we're really trying to focus on this year is building a better partnership, making sure that we're hearing staff and having staff voice included. I know that we get reminded of that often, and we need to get it to more operationalized so that we don't have to be reminded that it's just part of what we always do. I think that's definitely a goal that Kim and I have had. I think, the other piece is really looking at that data. We've looked at it a lot with our school leaders, and we've talked about, okay, so what does this mean at your site, and what is it that you're hearing? How do you elicit better feedback from staff? How do you help include them more in the process of decision making? I know that one of the things that we've heard is that, we need more face-to-face time. So in becoming a district-wide PLC, our work last year, I think, was leaders gave a lot more of their staff meeting time to groups to work on, like and what they heard is, no, we actually want more of that time back to have meetings and talk through some of these things. So they're better finding that balance this year. I think also becoming a district-wide PLC is going to help us because it's going to share the load a little bit more. Teachers don't have to feel, and our staff and our paras don't have to feel so isolated, that we're going to really share in the work a lot more together.
And our school leaders have looked at the data with regard to what staff members and families and students are saying. And so Chris and I are having conversations with them as we're goal setting. A recommendation that I've had for the people that I work with is to take your data, your staff data, to your SAT. Have a conversation with them. What is it that they're seeing in this data? What are some possible strategies and some things that they can focus on moving forward? So we are, I would say the family data and our family engagement is going to be an area of growth. We have some great things happening throughout, but systemically, it's an area that we need to work on. In terms of the staff, that's also an area of growth for us, but it is something that we are asking our school leaders to review with their SAT and come up with some strategies and plans to support staff members, because that's critical.
Yeah, thanks. Just to piggyback a little bit on those comments. I've definitely noted during my visits to the staff as part of the strategic planning process, there is a desire for more staff voice. Like was mentioned over here, we're really focusing on student voice, obviously, and we want to do the same with staff voice. There were some encouraging words at Frylands Elementary the other evening at the end of it. A couple teachers came up and we had a good conversation, and the comment was, it feels like we're starting to get on the same side of the line here, instead of looking at each other with the line between us. And I think part of that is that we're listening, we're identifying growth areas together, and then addressing some of the things that we're hearing. That's going to go a long ways when it just comes to organizational health in general. There's some other pieces that have been missing that will help us. Clarity in the system breeds better health. Just this notion that we're developing a strategic plan together absolutely will make a difference, that people can rally together around a common vision for the future. Those things, and I also know that it's easy to take a few steps back as well. So we're being really mindful of how we're interacting with our staff moving forward. And we have a lot of good opportunities for sure. Molly, you mentioned, how are we supporting staff in creating more of a sense of belonging for our students as well? Just a reminder that one of our most precious resources is time. So when we had our teacher days back at the beginning of the year, Christian Page did the full paid or the full day with our elementary staff around, or our entire staff, actually K-12, around utilizing student voice to enhance student belonging. So that was a big resource there that we spent on this specific issue. And then Dr. Shiraki Hawley came back and met with our secondary folks October 13th, I believe.
Yes.
And that was on learning how to apply culturally responsive strategies in your classroom. There's a lot of things that happen sometimes in our classroom that doesn't work well with some of the cultures that we serve. So we're learning, how do we meet the needs of all cultures that are represented in our classroom through really specific tangible classroom strategies. So there's some things that if we get good at applying in our classrooms, it's a much higher degree of likelihood that more students will feel like they belong. It'd probably be a good thing for us to outline some of those strategies at an upcoming board meeting. I was encouraged by the practical nature of some of these strategies that our secondary teachers are learning. And we're mindful of, it can't just be these one-off deals. We have to figure out, okay, we learned some things together as a staff. How do we continue to build that capacity and support those strategies being used in our classrooms? So.
Thank you, Superintendent Woodward. My next question is about the escalation cycle. Actually, this is my first time seeing the escalation cycle and
We will do our best.
our our skills for our SCL curriculum that are taught. And it's a lot of information. And I'm just curious really what it looks like. I don't know, like what it looks like in real life, I guess. I have kids in school and having a better understanding of what that looks like when there is a behavioral issue in the classroom or there is an escalation of some sort in the classroom, and having a better understanding for me as a parent, because otherwise I have my 8, 9-year-old explaining it to me and I'm trying to catch up and understand. So I am curious about how we can, I think we touched on wanting to partner with our families more, and I'm curious how we are getting more of that information out so that our families have it. So that when they're having a discussion with their 8 or 9-year-old as well, that they have a path forward.
So I know, I'm not sure that everybody is doing this, but we have some teachers, some schools that are sending some of the second step stuff home with parents so that parents understand the language that we're using and the strategies that we're using in school. And sometimes they can use that at home. And it is all about helping students to identify the emotions that they're feeling, helping them to understand why they're feeling that way, and then teaching them some of the strategies to de-escalate, to soothe, to calm. And so those would be great things to share with families so that kids are having the same experience at home maybe as they are at school. We also work with families because, you know, families know their students better than anybody. And so often if those tier 1 strategies are not working, that's when we start partnering with families. When your student gets frustrated, what is something that you do at home that's successful? So this is definitely a two-way street that we want to continue to engage in, and we will get better at that as we go along.
Well, I'm curious if there's a graphic like that says this is tier 1 strategies, tier 2 strategies, and what that looks like so that as a parent, I am better aware of what the process is for my student or our family.
I think we're still building out our MTSS
Okay.
framework as a district. I think we've started that work, but it's not complete. It's a work in progress. 2025, I think, is when we have to be completed with that for the state. So, but to answer your question, yes, there are things that we can put, but we don't have it all like graphically
out, yeah.
organized right now. I can give you an example of an escalation cycle just from when in my teaching days, having used second step. I can think about kindergarten. So a trigger might be we're in a play workshop, you know, they're having their purposeful playtime and a student wants a toy that another student has. And so they might go to grab it. And so that would be like impulse control. So it would be like, oh, you know, the language might be, oh, we're going to stop. We're going to hands on our own bodies. We're going to wait our turn. As a teacher, you might go in and reteach that in the moment from the lesson. Sometimes that works and a student is able to calm down, and sometimes that doesn't work. They might get more frustrated. So you might say, okay, I want you to stop. I want you to tell me what the problem is. So I want you to state the problem. So a student who's able to would say, you know, I'm frustrated, or they'd probably be like, I'm mad, I want the car. And so you say, oh, I hear that you're feeling really frustrated. Frustration is a big feeling. When we're frustrated, what's one thing that we can do? And so you might be able to interrupt the peak so it doesn't get to like, I'm screaming, I'm crying, I'm throwing the toys now. Now you might be able to interrupt it and get straight over to de-escalation. Like, okay, so I'm going to do my belly breathing. All right, let's do the belly breathing together. 10 big belly breaths. We would do it together. Okay, so next time this happens, how could we use our problem solving steps? And then you would use the problem solving steps. And then you might follow back up with the whole class and say, hey friends, today so-and-so had a really hard time and we used, you know, our strategies, and that's how you're developing empathy. And then you would go to talk about that. So that's kind of what it might look like in a classroom. And the hope is to interrupt it so it doesn't get to the peak where you're like having the desks thrown over or the toys thrown or the markers thrown, because there's big feelings in these little bodies and they don't always have the words or the strategies. And so the curriculum helps the teacher teach the strategies.
Thank you for answering. I think I think my children's kindergarten teacher helps me and talks to me like that now that you were guiding me through that, I think she still talks to me like that. So I shout out Miss BP. Thank you for that. I look forward to hearing from each of the individual schools and kind of what their strategies are, because I'm sure, and I was again looking through the data and seeing how it's different for each of the schools, and I'm curious and excited to hear from them. Thank you.
One more quick follow-up question. So if you've got tier 1 and tier 2, which is tier 2 is parent partnership, what happens if there's not so much parent partnership or the parent partnership isn't working? Is there a tier 3?
Sometimes there's counseling, like our counselors get involved. They might come in to pull a small group, like a friends group at lunch. It would be a tier 2 intervention that doesn't necessarily involve families being right there. Tier 3 intervention, those are very specific, individualized. Another example I could give is a tier 3 intervention is like, you might have 1 or 2 students on the playground, kindergartners again, can't keep their hands to themselves. So they might be on a recess card that just has every day they go out, they get a smiley face if they've kept their hands to their own body. They might get a frowny face if they didn't. And so the goal would be after 3 smiley faces, they get, if you have a parent partnership, a tier 3 might be they get to call home. If you don't, it might be that there's some other kind of motivation. It might be time with the principal. It might be time with the fidget. It might be time with the toy. 5 minutes, they're back in class. And so the tiered intervention doesn't hopefully would involve parents, right? But in the circumstances where that isn't available, there are lots of other strategies that we can also employ within the school day.
A secondary example would be, we have some students who being in a classroom might cause them to not be able to maintain their emotions as well as they like. And that student will have a pass where they can go to a specific place for a specific amount of time, do some writing, do some journaling, just sit and breathe until they feel like they have enough control where they can go back into the classroom and re-engage in the learning. So for that tier 3, that's really specific for an individual student.
Any other questions?
Is there, I'm sure there is. Joe Nagel does the mental health wellness survey, and I'm sure he's looked at the correlation between absenteeism and wellness. With the attendance, are they basically unexcused absences? When we're looking at attendance, are they forging their mom's note signature, and saying that they're sick? Not that that would ever happen or
Never
has happened. So how do you gauge this attendance? I mean, are they calling in sick, or are they?
So the impact of attendance, it doesn't matter whether it's excused or unexcused. And we know that some students, I mean, there's the flu thing going around already. And so we have
Mhm.
students who are out for a long extended period of time. And there are just some absences that we just can't help. Sometimes something's happening with a family and they need to pull their kiddo out for a little bit of time. I don't know what the percentage of students who are forging their parents'
Well, that was
signature.
just
But no, I get what you're saying. But an absence is an absence. They're missing the learning. When they're not in school, that makes it harder for them to go back. So we know that whether it's excused or not, then it's impacting their academic achievement.
There are ways for us to run reports that tell us what the absence is as well. And so the challenge is that if it's 40% of your students who are absent, right, you can imagine what a report must look like at the high school. And so tightening that piece up and improving overall attendance will really help us to get very strategic and specific about the underlying causes and be able to ferret out better who's really sick or who has an excused absence for legitimate reasons versus illegitimate reasons. And then you can have a better partnership with your families too, when you can really start to ferret those things out. Is it anxiety? Are they sitting in their car because they're anxious, or
sure.
did they go down to the local gas station?
Sure. Well, this is important information, and you can tell that the rest of the board is concerned about our student wellness. For me, you can't wrap your arms around 5,800 kids. You want everyone to be to feeling well and to achieve. And the relationship between attendance and wellness definitely affects academics, which is our other priority that we're working on. So it's good information. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Jen and Kim, thank you so much. Thank you for all that you do. Okay, moving on to agenda item 3.01. Our student representatives will present a report highlighting student activities throughout the district. Miss Laura?
So I was going to just go over all the programs that we have at Sky Valley, since I feel like we have an option for every student, every family. So I have a list of the programs. This isn't all of them. This is just the ones that are on the website, but there's a few other ones. I don't think they're necessarily programs, they're classes, but most people consider them programs. So we have the Parent Partnership Program, which is grades K through 12, which has over 200 individual classes. And then we have Family Forest School, Environmental Study School, which is grades 6 through 10. STEM, which is grades 6 through 10, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And then we have Montessori Co-op Program, which is grades K through 10. Family Co-op, grades K through 8. Integrated Academy, grades 1 through 8. Academy of Critical Thinking, grades 6 through 12. Kindergarten, which is just kindergarten. Personalized Learning, grades 8 through 12. And Excursion Program, K through 5. So every week I'm gonna just go over one of the programs that we have. So this week I talked to one of the students from STEM. So STEM focuses on science, technology, engineering, and math, which I just said, but it covers all the core curriculum, so like language arts and I think social studies as well. So the students do a lot of group work. They're currently designing decks made out of popsicle sticks. So that's cool. I went in there and they were just all on the floor doing little groups. It was cool. And then last week they had a 3-night, 2-day field trip to Deception Pass. And they are starting their science fair project, which will be an exhibit on the effects of a shipwreck on nearby terrain. I think they're doing Blackbeard maybe. And that's not due until May. So it should be a cool exhibit. And then they're also working on Growing the Moon project, looking at plant growth on the moon and Mars. So yeah, sounds like a cool program and sounds like they're having a lot of fun. And then as far as events go, there is a fall costume dance on Friday, I think. And we don't have school tomorrow for a staff day.
Hi. Wait, can you hear me? Good. Okay. I was just gonna go over how the week went. So we had that PEMP assembly, which was really fun and is great because we had a lot of student involvement from the lip sync competition, which I got to be a part of. And then there was the tailgate and football game, which had a lot of people show up. And Link Crew, who focused on 9th graders, put up a obstacle course, which we actually got a good amount of people. And then at the football game, there was a total of more than $7,000 raised for ASB. And then Emma Renero and Mason Edwardis were the winners of Homecoming Court. Next day was Homecoming, and you could tell ASB put a lot of work into it, and it was really fun. And then I was going to talk about the Christian page his work has been continued with ASB, and he has helped create 6 subcommittees, which is student and staff relationships, student behavior, student communication and volunteerment, diversity and inclusion, curriculum, and then school pride. So they've created it, and I know they have, I believe last year they were doing like, I think it's called like a 369 like schedule. So like 3 months, 6 months, and then 9 months. And then each end of the month, like of the 3 months and then 6 months and 9 months, you look up like where they've gotten and if they're actually reaching their goals and what they want complete by end of each of those periods. And then, yeah, that's about it.
Any questions?
I do. Well, thank you very much for sharing. I was curious about either of your thoughts, and of course, you're not obligated to respond about the student engagement results we just heard about.
Um, so I think they're obviously very concerning. But I don't know how much of it, I think a lot of it has to do with the staff, but I think a lot of it also probably has to do with how the students are treating each other. Yeah, I don't know. I think obviously there's stuff that we can do to support the staff, but yeah, I don't know how we could help the students, like how they're acting to each other, but I think that's probably a huge part of feeling welcome at the school.
Everything they just talked about, I think one thing is like surveys, sometimes a lot of kids don't like to participate in them just because the ones that we've done at the high school are always very lengthy and a lot of kids just like press random like answers and they just want to get through it. I feel like it would help if they just like had a one-on-one talk with somebody and actually got asked questions. I remember we did that freshman year and it was a lot more just like people were more willing to actually give real answers instead of the surveys where it's just you go on your Chromebook and you just kind of want to get it over with. And then for attendance, I feel like it's definitely COVID, and especially for the high schoolers, I feel like they're becoming adults, so they get to choose more instead of their parents of when they come or not. So I feel like that might be harder to get better attendance.
Thank you for sharing. Appreciate it.
What was the highlight of homecoming week? Sophia?
The highlight was probably the pep assembly. Cheer did a really great performance, and just the lip sync. It was so fun seeing everybody's own like groups, and the staff one was really funny to watch. That was definitely the highlight.
I think someone posted that online somewhere. I saw the staff one singing and dancing. That was awesome. And Miss Laura, what was the highlight of your week?
Um, I don't know. I just like so I go to school just Tuesday, Thursday, and then sometimes I'm there on Mondays. And always just my days that I'm on campus are so fun because I just like to walk around and just like talk to people and just I don't know. That's all just always my favorite part.
Thank you. Thank you both for your reports. Those were great. Okay, agenda item 3.02, public comment. Public comment forms received after the meeting has started will be saved for the following meeting. We welcome and value public comment on educational issues and recognize the importance of the opportunity for members of the public to express their thoughts to the board. It is the policy of the Monroe School District to promote mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among district employees, parents, and the public. We kindly ask that you refrain from comments that violate school district policy. Individuals are asked to limit comments to 3 minutes. A designated speaker for a group is asked to keep comments to 5 minutes. If you have a personnel concern, any staff member in the room can help with how to go forward with a complaint about personnel. The board does not respond to public comments during the business meeting. Please know that the board's silence is neutral. It is neither a signal of agreement nor disagreement with the speaker's remarks. The president may interrupt or terminate an individual's statement when it is personally directed, abusive, obscene, irrelevant, targets a protected class, or exceeds the time limit. As the board president, I will determine the appropriateness of all such rulings. When I call your name, please step up to the microphone. If attending the meeting virtually, please join us as a panelist, allow video, and unmute your microphone. We did have an online public comment submission. I asked Director Barnes to read it, and can you, their name first?
Okay, so it's Jeffrey Bennett. He's a father of children in the school district. He says, "Greetings, esteemed board members and superintendent. I first want to applaud the district for the transparency and the information released to the public. While the information on belonging and sense of connection are neither encouraging or mandated for disclosure, you have chosen to discuss them openly in this forum. Your willingness to discuss areas of struggle openly with the community is refreshing and needed, so we can together shower these students with the attention they deserve to address their social needs for connection. I want everyone to imagine going from a working environment where you worked with the same group of people every day and had lunch where you could see any of your friends with adequate time to spend time together before going back to work and finishing out the day. Now imagine you have a new boss who splits the workday into 6 separate working groups lasting just under an hour with only 5 minutes between each meeting. Also, lunch was not only split into 2 so that there is no chance for interaction with half the people, but if you wanted to go outside, you had to eat quickly in the first 10 minutes and then make the most of only 12 minutes before being called back inside. Do you believe that this is an environment that is suitable for meaningful connection? When I went to middle school, in addition to a longer lunch, we had a break. During break, teachers stayed in their classrooms and were accessible if needed. There are lots of potential changes: a longer lunch, splitting the lunch periods by grade level, adding a break. But I think we should look at the time allotted at our middle school schedule for connecting and mandate an increase for next year. I understand that changes in schedule can impact busing and bus routes, and so I encourage the board to examine any other potential directed schedule change issues and then allow the staff to work with the community to develop a schedule that is better suited for our kids, given their need for connection and brain development. Much research has also been done on later starts for secondary school due to changes in sleep requirements and brain development during the post-puberty. In addition to the schedule requirement change, I have proposed, which will take significant planning. One thing you can do tonight is improve a sense of belonging in supporting the Kindness Week initiative before you tonight. Kindness goes a long way in improving a sense of belonging. I look forward to participating with you for further positive changes. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Okay, Heather?
Sean, how come you're not in green? I mean, it doesn't feel accidental, so I'm just wondering how you got left out. Okay, tell me when you're ready. Individual tonight. Thank you. Thank you very much for the fantastic presentation and also for the prior comment. Very, very well said. On the topic of belonging, I would like to give some kudos to Miss Ramona, Miss Debbie, and Ashley and Krista at the high school. My youngest son, who has developmental disabilities, attended homecoming and he absolutely felt like he belonged. So they are killing it and I deeply, deeply appreciate them. Similarly, Mike Birch, you know, he's gone out of his way for the last several years to make my oldest son feel like he belongs and he's killing it too. So we have some very, very phenomenal team members. I had a lovely conversation after a meeting recently with one of you, and we were talking about how frustrating it is that your hands are so tied when it comes to addressing the long outstanding issues around bullying in the district, and when it comes to what you can do to create meaningful consequences. And I am absolutely all for there being meaningful consequences for malicious mischief. But there is a huge difference between malicious mischief and a child in crisis. And when you have a family that has asked for help repeatedly, asked for an IEP, asked for a behavior plan, to then see a very small child suspended from school, being labeled a bully online because of a disability, we have a long way to go. We really have a long way to go. And there continues to be a tremendous disconnect between what you all hear here and what's happening in the classrooms, between the policy that you create and the actions that are happening day to day in the schools. And I am once again begging you to familiarize yourself with what's actually happening, not what you've said should be happening, because it matters. For example, I reported last year that in touring Sky Valley, I was told that, in order to attend Sky Valley, I understand that you have an IEP, but you'd really need to waive the IEP because we just don't do that here. We're not resourced for it. That's illegal, by the way. So I raised that to the admin team, only to find another family had the same experience recently. So there's a problem. There is a disconnect between what you say is going to happen as an admin team, as a leadership team, and what's happening on the ground. And we need to close those gaps because we can't fix what we don't understand. Finally, based on some of the comments from the last board meeting, it's clear that there were some people who misunderstood my comments from the prior board meeting regarding Kindness Week. Please don't get it twisted. I absolutely love the idea of Kindness Week. It just can't be the only thing that we do to help the kids who are hurting today. And if you don't understand the difference between positivity and toxic positivity, you don't belong in those chairs.
Thank you, Heather. Mark Atterbury. Hey, Mark.
Can I turn this just a little bit? Because I'm addressing the school board, but I also want to speak to the community as well. Is that okay? Can I just do this a little bit? Okay.
Sure.
Um,
Your name and your relationship to the school district.
my name is Mark Atterbury. My wife, Shauna, is also here. I've been a community member in this area since 1999, less a few years in the Marine Corps. And I have 4 children that have been or are currently enrolled in the Monroe School District. So I got a high schooler, I got a middle schooler, got an elementary kid, and I got one that made it through. She's doing brilliantly. Needless to say, we have a lot invested into Monroe and into Monroe School District. Sadly, I don't know as many people in the community as I'd like to. Some of that's due to my job and the hours that I've had to work over the last 15 years, especially. But my wife and I, we're highly invested in this place, in this district, in its culture, and in its future. We do have a number of concerns about things that have occurred, are occurring, maybe will continue to occur within the district and the school. And as such, I feel it's important to come up here and make those, we have to come up here and talk to the board. We have to come up here and talk to each other. Otherwise, we're not going to know. I'm not a Facebook guy, so you're not going to see me getting on social media wars with people. I have a very low tolerance for the computer warriors myself. But with that said, I wanted to come up here and share a few thoughts. We believe Monroe School District is good. We believe Monroe is good. We have stayed here despite some adversity, and we are willing to continue to invest into this place at the cost of our children because they're in this school. I don't look at it as an experiment, but we're willing to continue to make that investment to try to maintain the values that we think makes this place what it is. We hope to stop some of the negative trends and policies that are only going to act to corrupt our children and to bring this place down. And that's why I'm here. There are a lot of things I'd like to discuss. 3 minutes is not nearly sufficient time to do so. So you're going to get me in installments. You'll probably see my face a lot more. I hope that's a good thing. There's just not enough time to meaningfully detail some of the things that need to be detailed. What I will say real quick, you need to know a little bit about me because you can't view my comments if you don't know me. You're just going to judge me and you're going to move on. I very much believe all men are created equal. I very much believe there are objective truths in this world. I believe mankind has free will, and I am very grateful that in America, you can have different thoughts, views, and expressions than I do, and we can all still get along. We're seeing that falter a little bit, and I think we need to get back to it. So today is just an intro, so you can see the value of me and my family and of our perspectives and what we bring to the community. But I would like to remind the school, and I know I'm short on time, the primary mission of Monroe Schools, the reason it was ever founded in the first place to exist, is to educate our children to traditional academic facts. This has and always will be the focus. So every decision made by teachers, administrators, this board, or anyone else involved needs to be tethered and steered by that fact. And I think is especially potent with the information we got tonight. So changes in policies need to be steered by the primary mission. So I just wanted to remind the board of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Lonnie? Hi.
I'm just gonna turn this back and lower it a little bit because I'm a little one over here.
Lonnie, can I get your name and your relationship to the school district?
Yeah, I'm Lonnie Williams and my child goes to Frylands Elementary. I'm just gonna read this because it's easier. Hi all, I'm Lonnie Williams. My child is a first grader at Frylands. For the past 8 weeks, a student in my child's class has been having violent and disruptive outbursts. This has been anything from yelling to violence, such as scratching other students, throwing chairs, throwing scissors, throwing water bottles, etc. As a result of this violence, the first grade classes have been, my child's first grade class has been evacuated or told to hide under their desks upwards of 20 times in the 33 days since school started. That's a lot. Parents in the class were not informed that this was happening until our students started to tell us what was going on, and we demanded that a letter be sent home. My 6-year-old daughter is an emotionally level child. She's bright and she's mature. But right now, with regards to school, my child is afraid. She's displaying signs of anxiety related to going to school, sleep disturbances, waking up early with stomach aches and asking to stay home, and emotional outbursts, among other things. These are signs of trauma, and these things are damaging to her mental health. As a parent, the only way I knew to ease her anxiety was to tell her that she could ask to call me if she was afraid, and I would talk her through it or come get her if she felt like it was necessary. I've had to leave work 4 times since this started to come pick up my child because she was too afraid to continue the day at school. I was informed this week that the administrator at our elementary school has decided to stop allowing scared children to make phone calls home to their parents. He plans to speak with our children who are 6 and try to handle the big feelings himself. With all due respect to him and respect to his abilities, I think this is deeply sideways. If my 6-year-old child is legitimately afraid at school, I believe that she should have unfettered access to me as her safe person. She isn't making up her feelings. She isn't being dramatic. She is anxious as a result of violence in her classroom. I hope that informing all of you of this will allow involved families to see more support and actionable items to support a classroom full of students that are being impacted. Thank you.
Thank you, Lonnie. Agenda item 4.01, Kindness Week resolution. Is there a motion?
I move that the Monroe School District Board of Directors approve Kindness Week Resolution number 11.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second that the Monroe School District Board of Directors approve Kindness Week resolution number 11. Discussion.
I am very excited for this small piece of a much bigger picture of things that need to happen. Um, you know, boiling kindness down to its most basic core principle is just about being nice, right? And we all need reminders sometimes. We get stuck in the day-to-day rut of whatever is going on. Our kids, they get swept up in a lot of things. And just for what we've been through the past couple of years, it's always good to have reminders. And so my true hope is that this is a reminder that for 1 week, we can, at least those who participate, can exude a little more kindness, make a positive impact in someone's life. Even if it just touches one person, to me, it would have all been worth it. To bring a little more unity to our schools through just a collective resolution, something that they can all participate in together, I think is a good thing. So I'm looking forward to this being just a small piece of that bigger picture and everything that we're trying to do to make Monroe a place where people feel like they belong.
So there was a request to delay this by a week, so it matches what the city of Monroe is doing. What's some more information on that?
So the city of Monroe will be voting on something similar to this tomorrow night. I haven't officially looked at that. My plan is to attend the meeting and speak. Snohomish County Council is going to have this on their agenda soon. Sultan City Council, it should be going on the agenda hopefully this week. North Shore School District has also decided to adopt this because of someone who reached out and wanted to be a part of it, which is kind of cool in that sense. And I believe it's going to be reintroduced to the Sultan School District again this evening. Their school board meeting starts at 7. So just community trying to come together to rally around something to make our community a better place, I think is pretty cool.
And they're all choosing the second week in November? I take it?
Yes, yep.
Did you want to read the resolution? Do you want me to?
Okay, I'll go ahead and read the resolution. So, resolution declaring the second week in November Kindness Week for the Monroe School District. Whereas World Kindness Day is an international holiday that was formed in 1998 to promote kindness throughout the world. And whereas this presents us with the opportunity to reflect upon and model one of the most important and unifying human principles. And whereas both large and small acts of kindness have the potential to promote and diffuse this crucial quality that brings people of every kind together. And whereas the Monroe School District seeks to highlight the good deeds in our schools and focus on the positive influence and common thread of kindness, which binds us all together and helps promote a feeling of belonging. And therefore be it resolved that the Monroe School District in Monroe, Washington, to proclaim the second week in November Kindness Week, joining together with our community to build a kinder and more compassionate school district where everyone feels at home and everyone feels they belong. Adopted by the Board of Directors of the Monroe School District, number 103, Snohomish County, Washington, this hopefully 23rd day of October, 2023. And I will say too, I left you each some gifts on your table there. This is something that Sky Valley has done. I'm on the kindness committee at Sky Valley, and they just made these today. They were hot off the press, but just for people to know, the reminder, kindness does matter. A smile and hello, you look great in that top. How's your day going? It's so good to see you. Those things can make a big difference in someone's day. So I was really excited. I'm wearing mine, even though you can't see it. I wanted to kind of stay somewhat professional while having it on. And the green was not, it was not talked about it. This was not a coordinated effort.
We just didn't tell Chuck.
This was happy coincidence. I don't know. It's fall time. Green's a good color. But yeah, so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what you found on the tables there and encourage you to wear them.
So before we vote on it, are we gonna fix the typo? And, okay, yes. Or can we vote on it and then they'll fix it? And then the date, probably. Okay.
Okay, there's a motion on the table.
I did want to say thank you, Molly. I know that you invested a lot of time and energy into this and had lots of conversations, and you have a tremendous heart for this community. And I appreciate you taking the lead on that and bringing this to the board. Yeah, thank you. Okay, there is a motion. All in favor, raise your hand. The motion has passed 4-0. Okay, agenda item 5, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that the Monroe School District Board of Directors approve all items as listed and presented in the consent agenda dated October 23rd, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second that the Monroe School District Board of Directors approve all items as listed and presented in the consent agenda dated October 23rd, 2023. All in favor, raise your hand. The agenda item has passed 4-0. Agenda item 6.01, superintendent update with Superintendent Woodward.
All right, so President Bumpus asked that at a future meeting, we go over the student discipline policy 3241. This is not the meeting, but there is a part of it that I wanted to go over because I think there's some misunderstanding about the policy and how we apply it in our school district. One of the questions that I most frequently get is regarding the use of exclusionary discipline. And so I just wanted to read a statement that's pulled from Board Procedure 3241. And then at an upcoming meeting, we'll go over the board or the policy and the procedure in its entirety and also share some statistics and data as well. So here's the section that I wanted to read. It's about in-school suspension and short-term suspension. The superintendent designates school principals and assistant principals with the authority to impose in-school and short-term suspension. Before administering an in-school or short-term suspension, staff members must have first attempted one or more other forms of discipline to support the student in meeting behavioral expectations. Before administering in-school or short-term suspension, the district will consider the student's individual circumstances and the nature and circumstances of the behavioral violation to determine whether the suspension and the length of the suspension is warranted. The district will not administer in-school or short-term suspension in a manner that would result in the denial or delay of the student's nutritionally adequate meal for a student or prevent a student from accomplishing a specific grade, subject, or graduation requirements. The district is not required to impose in-school or short-term suspensions and instead strives to keep students in school, learning in a safe and appropriate environment. However, there are circumstances when the district may determine that in-school or short-term suspension is appropriate. As stated in this policy and procedure, the district will work to develop definitions and consensus on what constitutes behavioral violations to reduce the effect of implicit or unconscious bias. So I think I was meeting with Chuck and Molly on Friday, and we were having a conversation about this. And I think there's maybe a misunderstanding in regards to how frequently do we utilize exclusionary discipline. Expulsion is very rare because it would require a student to bring a gun to school, meaning that serious in order to expel a student for an entire school year. Short-term suspensions and in-school suspensions are still a very common tool, as long as but it's during the course of progressive discipline. As the policy stated, there must be other things done first. This school year so far, there have been roughly 237 times a student has either been suspended, out of school, or in school suspension. In school suspension, that is anything that is 10 minutes or more of missing class. So most of the exclusions are of an in-school nature. As far as out of school suspension, so far we've had, 33 school days when we ran this report. There have been, 80 different incidences that resulted in out of school suspension. So 80 times, if my math is correct, that's roughly 2.4 per day over the course of the 33 days. Someone mentioned we have roughly 5,800 students. So in my experience, that's not an inordinately high number. It seems about right. Most of those 80 suspensions were for a period of 1 day or less, but most of them range between 1 and 3 days, I would say. 24 of the suspensions have been at the elementary level, 17 at the middle school level, and 39 at the high school level. Of those 80, roughly half of them are due to 25% were fighting. That's mostly at the secondary level, of course. No, I shouldn't say of course, but that's typically where you're going to have fights that lead to suspensions. 25% roughly of the 80 incidences were related to tobacco use at school. So that those two things are about half of those suspensions. Moving forward, I will go over. I think the board policy, I'll have to review it again, requires us yearly to share the suspension data and disaggregate it by student demographic as well. So you can have a look at, are there any of our student groups that are either over or underrepresented with this data? So we'll definitely do that at some point this year as well. But I definitely wanted to just give you a sense, where are we at so far this year? I think the administrators, it's kind of a subjective call at times, right? Whether or not you use in school or out of school suspension. I read every single one of them. So I sign off. I don't sign off before they're given, but of course I want to see every suspension letter and review it. I would say that definitely there's a lot of thought that goes into whether or not you exclude a student from school, for sure. But again, moving forward, I'll do a more detailed report as well. And any questions on that for now? Okay, and I lost my notes, but let's see. Sorry about that. One more quick thing. We had 2 successful community meetings this past week tied to our strategic planning. And by successful, that just means somebody showed up and gave us input. So we were pleased with that. We had, I think, a really good turnout at Monroe High School. We had roughly 25 to 28 people in attendance there. Much lower attendance on the south end of our district. However, the parents that did show up were very appreciative that we thought to have something in that neck of the woods as well. As a reminder, we're keeping all of that input from the focus groups that I ran at the beginning of the year, along with all the information from my one-on-one meetings and then other community meetings moving forward to help inform our strategic plan. That's all I have. Thanks.
Sean. Yeah, so we chatted a couple of weeks ago about kind of outlining dates of upcoming school improvement plans, board goals. Do you have an update on that?
Yeah, and I updated in the board update to you as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll read through that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So as far as district level goals are concerned, tonight, the attendance and belonging goals were shared. There's no requirement for the board to adopt those goals. I talked to Director Campbell recently, and we had a conversation about this year. Probably we're just going to share the district level goals, which we already did, ELA and math, and then attendance and belonging tonight. As a normal course of action moving forward, and this is what I'm more familiar with and working in other districts in this role, is that once we you all adopt the strategic plan in April, we will also have an associated set of metrics tied to that strategic plan. And once you adopt the plan, you'll also be adopting our 5-year metrics as well. So we've shared the district level goals. What you will approve though, and this is what you do every year, are the school improvement plans. So at the first 2 meetings in November, the plans will be shared with the specific goals as well and the strategies, and then you will adopt those at that time.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Sean. That was great. Thank you for the transparency and all of that information. I look forward to our next meeting too. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7.01, we have board reports and or comments. Anyone like to go?
Guess that means it's me again. Okay, so a couple of things. I had the opportunity to attend one of the community input events on Tuesday. And it's always refreshing to hear feedback from people in the community. Even if it's stopping me at a football game and I'm sitting there asking them questions about how things are going or what we can improve upon or do better. I think the more voice that we get from our community, the better that we can be as a school district, because we know what's going on, we know what's happening, and we know the things that we need to address. So I just really appreciate everyone who takes their time, from staff to community members to students, to give us that information so that we can make the best informed decisions that we can. Second, I had the opportunity to go to the football game, the homecoming football game on Friday. I want to give a shout out to band and cheer. The band was incredible. They played some amazing music, and cheer, they just had it all together. Their halftime performance was crazy good. I really thoroughly enjoyed that. And also just our homecoming court. Thank you for being a positive example to the students around you, for going out and collecting money and canned goods for the Sky Valley Food Bank, and just the impact that you're having within the community at Monroe High School and the greater community at large. I appreciate that, and congratulations to our winners again on that. I also, for those of you who weren't there at the game, Director Campbell brought his cowbell. And at first the stands were so full, he had to go sit on the Snohomish side. And so every time Monroe would score a touchdown, he was over there ringing that cowbell. And he said he got the dirtiest looks from the opposing team. But eventually at halftime, some people had left. So I invited him to come over. I'm like, come over, there's some seats over here. And man, when we would score a touchdown, he just would get up with all enthusiasm and ring that bell. It was pretty spectacular. I was like, maybe I need to get one of these. That was a pretty fun time. So congratulations to our Monroe football team for beating Snohomish. Again, they did fantabulous. I don't know, that's a new made up word. And it was a pleasure to be there with my kids and to experience that. The last thing that I will leave you with tonight is just a reminder for the VFW essay contest for our students, and also teacher nominations, board members. It closes October 31st. So please, if you've got a teacher that you want to nominate, or for students, you have an essay that you want to turn in, there is prize money that is given out for that. And it's just another opportunity for our kids to be involved and to learn and grow. So I encourage you to do that. And we have a teacher who, well, 2 years in a row, we've gotten Teacher of the Year through the VFW for junior high. So maybe we can make it 3 years in a row, get those nominations in. I hope everybody has a fabulous week, a safe Halloween, however it is that you celebrate that or don't celebrate that. I just wish everybody well.
Thank you, Director Barnes. I tried telling Director Campbell, my husband is a football coach. I told him that is beyond disrespectful, sir. You don't sit on the other sideline and ring a cowbell. And I don't think he realizes that the other head coach was actually a former coach for Monroe too. So I'm gonna have to let him know that. I wanted to just say that I'm really enjoying our workshops, touring our facilities. We were able to tour Sky Valley with our first one, and it was great to have parents or community join us along that walk. And I look forward to continue doing it. I believe we have one scheduled for every month. Yes. Yes. Okay. And this is a great opportunity where you can hang out with the board and Sean and tour the campus. So if you have any concerns around safety or ways to improve the facility, please come and hang out with us. It's generally at 4 p.m. and it's right before a school board meeting or a regular school board meeting. Okay. Well, that said, go Bearcats. And it is 6:34 p.m. and tonight's meeting is adjourned. Thanks.